Hello and welcome. This is Jim Karp with Rehmann. I have Mark Spock with me. Mark, good afternoon.
Hey, Jim, good afternoon.
I appreciate you joining me here. Mark, can you share a little bit about yourself, how you were your role within the firm, and then we can kind of get down to business here real quick. Go ahead.
You bet, absolutely. So I am the Director of Support Services for the Rehmann Technology Support Group. We aim every day to give excellent service to clients and solve a wide variety of technical support issues. I'm also serving as Virtual Chief Information Officer for a number of our clients. That role is very consultative and aims to kind of guide our clients through the IT jungle and help them on a roadmap and a strategy to success. And then also I do head up our cybersecurity practice as well.
Okay, and that's pretty much the thrust of where we'd like to go today. We know a lot of the organizations are adjusting to the new normal here as we're out of our offices. A lot of people are working remote. From your perspective, Mark, what are the challenges that are out there, some of the risks, and some of the things that you can do about it?
You bet. I've got a list of probably 8 different things that I'm just going to share with you today. And I'll just start off with the first one. I think one of the big challenges is that many organizations are figuring out how to pivot. They're trying to figure out how to operate within this new challenging landscape. And many of them may be tempted to compromise in in a couple of different areas. One of them is what we commonly call remote desktop protocol. This is a service that allows a user to be able to get into a workstation or get into a server from a remote location. And oftentimes in the past, the way that these remote desktop protocol services were set up is they were available to the outside internet. They were available outside the firewall, and users were able to connect in and be able to continue to do their jobs. Well, as you can imagine, the bad actors have also figured this out, and they know to look for it, and they're scanning for it, and they've been finding remote desktop out there and available and trying to compromise it. So that kind of leads me into my second point, which is making sure that those endpoints are using a VPN connection. And essentially what that VPN is, it's a virtual private network, and it creates a secure session or a secure tunnel between your remote worker and the office. And if you want to make remote desktop available, let's make sure we're doing it behind the firewall and not outside the firewall. So by using a VPN connection, it ensures that you have a good secure connection back to the company, and then you can connect to the resources that you need securely.
Okay, so jumping in here real quick then. So you got the remote desktop protocol, that's RDP, and then you want to put it behind the virtual private network. So if you're not a technical person and you wanted some support and some help, is there a brand or a particular company that you would get the RDP and the VPN from, or are there several that are out there that anyone would do?
Yeah, so there are a number of offerings that are available in the marketplace. One of the principal products that we support is Watchguard. Watchguard firewall products do offer VPN connectivity if you have a Watchguard firewall today. This is something that can be set up and configured for your business. Most commonly, when we talk about remote desktop protocol, the Microsoft version of that technology is typically what's being used. Macintosh does also offer a way to do remote support as well. But there are a number of different players that are out there in the space. But we principally support Watchguard, Fortinet, and a couple of those major suppliers.
Gotcha. Okay, so switching gears here, a lot of times people talk about multi-factor authentication as well as password management. What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, so that's a pretty big point here with a lot of people moving to home, is that, they are now accessing resources potentially from either an endpoint that's maybe managed by the organization or not managed by the organization. And, making sure that we're managing our credentials is very, very important. Multi-factor authentication is a great way to secure your accounts and make sure that you have that second factor. So when you have a username, such as an email address and a password that goes along with that account, if somebody were to try to compromise that account, maybe there's an attempt that's coming from Russia or Poland or some other country, we want to make sure that we're putting a check and balance in place to actually query that user and go, okay, you have the right login information, but I've got to validate your second factor. And so having that second factor ensures that if somebody does compromise your account credentials, that they're not able to log into the account. And that kind of gets into my second point, which is really talking about strong passwords. It's very key to make sure that we're maintaining strong passwords. When we talk about a strong password, it has uppercase and lowercase, it has some special characters, and it also has some length, it has some complexity to it. And so we want to make sure that we have all of those basic tenets in place. And we want to make sure that we're not using that password across multiple services. Because if your account did get compromised, now that individual has access to whatever account you've used that password across. And it's basically an attack, what we call password stuffing. And it's a way that they will take that account and see where else they can use that account to log in and gain access. So multi-factor authentication, a great protection mechanism, have that in place. That's something that you can do on your business applications. It's something that you can do on your Office 365 account, and is a staple recommendation.
Okay. And then how about endpoint protection? I hear a lot of people talking about that. What are your thoughts from that vantage point?
You bet. Endpoint protection is kind of a big deal now, because now we've got a lot of people that are working from home. They're using personal internet connections. You may not necessarily have the same content filtering in place. You may not have the same policies and governance in place that you would normally have when you are at the office. So now your users have access to a wide variety of different data and sources with that endpoint. And so we want to make sure that we're putting protections in place that go beyond just traditional antivirus. So traditional antivirus is a good step. It's a good way to scan your machine and make sure that you have some very good base protection in place. But when we talk about endpoint protection, we're actually talking about kind of upping our game a little bit with the technologies that we use. Most commonly with endpoint protection, we're deploying things such as artificial intelligence. We're deploying machine learning. And the goal here is to really understand the user's behavior, understand what they do on their PC, and what a normal day looks like on that computer, so that when we do accidentally click on something that's harmful to our PC, that AI and that machine learning engine is going to be able to pick up on it. It'll be able to quarantine the threat. In some cases, it will be able to roll back your machine. So if there was a malicious attack that took place, that software would roll the machine back prior to the infection and return that endpoint to a good state. So the attacks that we're seeing today are becoming much, much more advanced, and it goes far beyond what a traditional antivirus is able to deliver. So it's really important that we take a look at that. Additionally, the other recommendation I would make as well is let's make sure that firewall is enabled. Built right within the operating system. If you have a Windows operating system, there's a Windows firewall that's built in. We want to take a look at that, make sure that we have that enabled and turned on. It's another good way to protect that endpoint.
Okay, so outside the machine, there's additional things you could do to safeguard your PC that isn't technical. What are those types of things?
You know, absolutely. Probably one of the easiest one is it really just comes down to the physical access component. So now that you have this endpoint at home, this endpoint potentially has access to intellectual property. It may have non-public information on the endpoint. So it's really, really important where we've got personal life and work life kind of blending together on a more regular basis within the home, that you just want to make sure that you're locking that endpoint when you step away. It's kind of very similar to when you're in the office, you get up to maybe go get a cup of coffee or go off and have maybe a meeting or a conversation. When you step away, you really want to lock that PC. Even though we're all kind of in a, stay at home kind of a mandate, we do recognize that people will come and go, and you may not be able to keep your eyes on your PC at all times. And you also just don't want, something to happen by accident. Maybe a child walks through and bangs on the keys a little bit while you had stepped away. So just really important key just to make sure that we're locking our PC.
Okay, backing up data. What are your thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, so this is an important one as well, because now that we are in some cases disjoined or disconnected from the office, we're still creating data. We're still managing data. We may still have data that we are creating and it needs to be saved. And ideally, what we really want to do is make sure that that data is being backed up. So this kind of ties into the whole VPN connection. So when I can maintain that connection back to the office, that gives me the opportunity to save my data back to the office where it's being backed up on a regular or a daily basis. So it's really important to make sure that you have this stuff stored off-site, because if your PC were ever to be involved in some type of a malware attack or some type of a ransomware, you want to make sure that that data that you've created has been off-sited somewhere and it's being protected. So that's a very important point to keep in mind.
Other things that you'd suggest?
So I think the other one is really just keeping our eyes out and being vigilant as it relates to phishing emails, and watching for scams. So I think that's one of the big things that we're going to start seeing a lot more of. The bad actors know that many people are working from home, and so it's a great opportunity for them to adjust their phishing campaigns and start targeting users in a different way. And so I would really encourage just being vigilant, watching for those phishing emails. As a business owner, one of the things that I would recommend is looking at some security awareness training for your staff. Many organizations are now starting to look at this as a great way to evolve what we would call the human OS, and evolve our ability to actually detect when we are being attacked by a phishing threat. So security awareness training ongoing is a great way to really bring your staff up to speed and prepare them for those types of attacks and be able to sniff them out before they occur. Additionally, we're probably going to see an increase in work from home scams. There's going to be emails that come through and offers that are to come through. Hey, here's how to make your PC faster. Hey, this is a better way to manage your data. Or, hey, this is a great way to have video chat. It's going to include some links, some attachments. And these are all hot topics that the actors know is a big area of focus for many business owners. So really being vigilant with what's coming into our email box, evaluating it. Is this somebody that I recognize? Does this look legitimate? I'm going to hover over that link. I want to check where that link is going to take me. Those are very, very important things to keep an eyeball on. And then lastly, Jim, the last thing I would mention is really just keeping our PCs up to date. So many of our PCs are disconnected from the home base. If you do have a VPN, then your PC can still kind of check in and get some updates. But Microsoft is still releasing patches. There's vulnerabilities that are still being addressed. There's updates that are still being released. So it's important that we maintain that continuity and we make sure that we're keeping our PCs up to date and patched as often as we can.
Okay, so kind of wrapping this all up then, Mark, you first started off with remote desktop protocol. You said that you need to have it behind the VPN, the firewall. You want to make sure that you use the two-factor authentication as well as strong passwords. Consider doing some type of endpoint protection that has mitigation strategies with it. Make sure you have the physical locking device. Your data is backed up. You're looking out for the phishing emails as well as making sure that your machine's current. All great ideas that can help our organizations have that remote processing capability and be safe from that perspective. If clients have questions or comments, what's the best way to reach you?
You bet. Absolutely. We are happy to work with the business owners that are out there. All of them are dealing with these challenges in different ways, and we are happy to help. I can be reached. My email is mark, mark.spock, SPAAK, at Rehmann.com. That's REHMANN.com. And then if you want to give me a call, I'd be happy to talk further and get you lined up with the right resource and bring in the team that we need to answer the questions and the concerns that you have and get some solutions in place. So you can reach me at 616-301-6447.
All right, Mark, thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.